Right, so we're recording. So before we get started, I just want to kind of clarify, since we are getting a little bit closer to the final exam date, just kind of what to expect. So again, we have this week we're going to be done with, right? Be sure to get these 3 chapters assignments done before Monday night. If you experience difficulty, please do not hesitate to email us. As of right now, everyone who has emailed us should have been able to have a response at this point. If you have any concerns or if something was not fully answered, please reach out to us again. We'll handle it as soon as we can. But as of right now, everything should be good. So we're gonna have after today, just chapter 11 and 12 on Monday and Tuesday, and then we have our final exam. So the final exam is in person. I want to emphasize that. In fact, I will emphasize it here as well. The other 2 exams were offered hybrid. This is going to be a paper exam. That's just kind of the way the college wants to have it for a hybrid course. So we're just following with the way that it's supposed to be structured. The structure of the exam will be identical to the past 2 exams. You're going to get, I believe, at this point, just the multiple choice questions since actually probably multiple choice matching, just that kind of stuff. Since we're going to be the ones that are grading it, we could possibly put on a fill in the blank question, but I think it might be better if we just keep it on multiple choice and matching, like true false, that kind of stuff, just because it's a little bit simpler and we don't have to worry about, subjective answers and everything. But we'll definitely give more information on that once the exam is created. So don't worry about that. But it will be the same structure of questions. Some questions might be repeated. You might see some questions that you might have done on extra credit quizzes or past exams. I recommend good way of studying, go through your past exams, right? You will need to have your notes handwritten or printed out um, for the exam. Just please keep that in mind because we're not going to be doing it on computers this time. So that's going to be our final exam. There might be slightly more questions. It might be a little bit more than 50. It might be around 75 questions just to kind of give you guys a little bit of extra chances to do well. If let's say you don't do too hot on pivot tables, right? If there's like 3 questions on pivot tables, right? Those 3 questions would be worth way more points if there were only 50 questions rather than if there was more questions, like 75. So we might have more questions so that you guys can afford to skip a couple of questions, get a few wrong, etc. Depending on how students do, there might be a curve. We just have to see, just because, again, it's on paper. Students do differently, whether it's online or on paper. So we'll play it by ear. But if you've been doing well with the exams, exam 1 and exam 2, you feel confident, you feel great, you've been doing it yourself, you've been using your notes, you have good notes, you are going to do perfectly fine on the final exam. If you haven't been doing the exams yourself, AIing and stuff, if you don't have the best notes, if you're not doing the work yourself, then you might not do very well. So that's just a warning. Please make sure, you lock in, you do well. Um, and pretty much that's how the final is going to be structured. So just keep that in mind. We'll have 2 more lessons and then the final. It will be cumulative. But again, it will only be on stuff that we spent a lot of time on. I'm not going to ask you guys some obscure function that we spent like 5 seconds on. I'm not going to ask you what is the PMT function, for instance. It's going to be mostly just the basic stuff, right? Making sure that you guys understand what's a pivot table. How do I insert a chart? How do I do this? What is this feature? Simple things like that, right? Because again, you're going to have your notes in the real world environment as well. Okay. Any questions about the final exam, upcoming homeworks, upcoming deadlines? I'm going to update these as well. Um, I have them scheduled. I just have to write them here. It's each of these is only like 3 or 4 labs, just like the previous ones. So it's not that bad, but same exact structure for the upcoming 2 days ahead. Any questions about anything upcoming? Few attempts on chapter 10 homework and project. Yeah, absolutely. Sorry if that didn't necessarily give extra attempts at the beginning. I thought they all did, but I'll take a note of that. Okay, chapter 10, homework and project, extra attempts. Perfect. Yeah, of course, no problem. And again, if you guys have problems, if you run out of attempts, if it's not like grading it correctly, just email us. We will manually grade it. And we'll make sure that you get those points. Hello, Professor. I have access to Pearson until Sunday. If I finish chapter 10 by Sunday, do I have to buy access? Okay, that's another thing that I actually did want to bring up. Thank you, Aisha, for that. Let me go back on my Brightspace tab for that. So I want to first apologize for the book being a bit unclear. From the very beginning, I was under the impression that you didn't need the book because I thought that Pearson had a deal with our school and gave it to us. Then I found out that you did need the book, and I thought that once you buy the book, the code is in the book and you're all done. I didn't realize that you have to actually purchase the book through Pearson or the QC bookstore in order to gain access. So I apologize if you guys ended up being more confused on that, or if you had to end up returning your existing book to gain access. I apologize for any of that inconvenience. What I did find out, though, which you're more than welcome to take full advantage of this, is the Pearson refund policy. Basically, they have a 14-day refund policy. So if you bought the book access on, okay, let's say you used your free trial from June 1st to June 14th, right? That's what most of you guys probably did. And then you bought access. That's the paid access for about the $130 around June 15th, right? 14 days after June 15th, that's well past the end of the course. As long as you cancel your access to Pearson, you will get your money back. And since you're literally buying access for the book for only 2 weeks, which really is not honestly worth it. If it was like for a full semester, it would be one thing. I recommend that you do take advantage of this 14-day refund policy. But since I did find this out recently, if you bought the access much earlier on, all right, and let's say that the 14-day refund window is going to be expiring well before the end of the course, let me know. What I'm gonna end up doing is I'm gonna open up all the assignments early. So this weekend, you can honestly, if you would rather finish up all the assignments this weekend and go ahead, right? I know we haven't done 11 and 12 yet, but if you would like to go ahead and finish those assignments so you can finish all your work and cancel your access early to get your refund, you are more than welcome. Just remember, once you cancel your access, you cannot access anything else on Pearson. So you can't do any more assignments. What you've done is saved. I will have access to that. That's totally fine. But once you refund your access, you will not be able to use Pearson. You won't be able to view your old exams. Well, exam one. You won't be able to view any of the old projects, etc. What I'm also going to be posting is the projects themselves on a separate drive so that you can still access the instructions for the general projects after the fact. Basically, just to make that clear again, you're more than welcome to refund your access for Pearson as long as it's within 14 days. But when you cancel your access, you will not be able to access anything else. So I'm going to open up the rest of the chapters. If you want to get through them this weekend before your access goes into paid access so you can refund it and get your money back, go right ahead. Just be careful that, you won't be able to go back once you lose your access. Just to go over, the final is going to be on paper, right? It is an in-person final on paper. This is the department's policy, not mine. Yeah, no problem. It'll be multiple choice, matching, true, false, same structure as before. If anything changes, we'll be sure to let you guys know. It might be slightly more questions, maybe 75 rather than 50, just to make each point worth a little less. Okay. Any other questions before we get started? As of the current moment, we've sent emails out to everyone just kind of confirming that you guys have Pearson access and that you're all good. So if we haven't heard back from you, we're assuming that everything is good with you. If anything changes, please, 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 please let us know. Pearson has been extremely glitchy lately, and I just want to make sure that you guys do have your access, that you guys can get the assignments done, and that you don't have to stress over that because that's not fair to you. You should be able to do your assignments without any added stress about, do I have access? Am I going to lose my access, etc. So please just make sure if anything changes, let us know. Grades should be up. If not today, tomorrow. Just been a little hectic on my end. But yeah, I'll be sure to update any extra credit that you've done. So if you did, for exam 2, if you did 5, 6, and 7, or 8, actually, I'll put all these together. 5, 6, 7, 8. Each of them is, again, worth like 1.5 points. It might go down to 1 just so I don't have to deal with the decimals. But you will get extra credit for each of these guys. There will be review for the final. So you guys, according to Kevin, had finished chapter 9, started chapter 10 today. I'm assuming you're going to finish chapter 10, start chapter 11 on Monday, and finish chapter 11, 12 on Tuesday. So likely there'll be a review Tuesday, as well as a last minute review on Wednesday, for anything else that you guys need. I'll also be sure to give you guys another study guide based on the chapters that don't have study guides yet. So if you want, print those out and you should be good with that. Okay. Otherwise, are we good? Any other questions I could answer? Is everything clear? Oh, final is during lecture time. Sorry. Yes, same time as always, 11 a.m., not 9 a.m. So you guys are going to have a lab beforehand. Sorry if that wasn't clear. I think that's better, clear. Oh, you could bring as many cheat sheets as you want. They just have to be physically on paper. You could bring a whole notebook. You could bring study guides, print out your notes. Some people print out slides. maybe don't do that. You want to be able to actually go through your slide, like go through your notes at like a reasonable pace. But yeah, you could bring as many pages as you want. Yeah, so if you've been taking your notes in a Google Doc, just print them out. Queens College has free printing, by the way, if you don't know about that. So print them out beforehand and you'll be set. If you want to print out specific like formulas, if you want to make study guides, whatever you guys want, go right ahead. Still open notes as always, just again, paper exam, paper notes. If you guys have any problems, any potential issues you foresee for the final, please let me know. Unfortunately, there are no makeups unless for extenuating circumstances, like God forbid, you get like really, really sick or something like that. Just because quite literally, by like that Friday, I need grades in. So we want to make sure that you get it in. If you think that you're going to be late, don't worry. I'm more than happy to stay a little bit after if you need time to finish up. You're gonna have as much time as you need, honestly, to get through it. I don't think you should really need more than the 2 hours, to be honest. But if for whatever reason you do need a little bit more time, that's totally fine. Room located A135. Yeah. If you go in the science building, make a right, go all the way down, and there's this like little hallway that has like 5 rooms. It's the first one to the right. Yeah. Recommend you maybe get here a little earlier. That way, I get kind of lost sometimes here too. I'll summarize all this in a post as well, since I know we kind of went through a lot with that. So, I'll make sure to clear up all FAQs in a post, but otherwise, let's get started with our lesson for today. Okay. Yeah, I know everyone has different learning policies, so I just was kind of curious on, how you guys felt about the course and everything. There's going to be like an end of the course survey as well, fully anonymous and everything. So if you have any feedback, you could save it for our post-course survey. Anyway, let's do our quick little warm-up for the day. Went over yesterday the auditing tools that can help us troubleshoot different errors. So we went over how to create different colored lines that go between the precedent and dependent links. So if I have a formula, right, and I have precedents that go into the formula, right, and that formula is a dependent depending on those specific precedents, right? If it's A1 plus B1, right, we're depending on that A1 and B1. We can find both of these guys using tracer arrows, right? So this is essentially the overarching term for both our precedent and dependent links, right? And we can find that with our formulas tab under the formulas audit section, right? And there's a couple of different parts there that allow us to check for errors, have our watch window, etc. So nice little handy tool, especially when you're dealing with a lot of complicated formulas. Alrighty, so we're going to be kind of going over a lot of very powerful tools, pun intended, because things like Power Pivot and Power Queries are going to be involved with this. So I know you guys kind of started that a little bit today. Today, I'm going to honestly go over more of the general aspect of this because this lesson goes quite in depth. We don't really need to know every single little power add-in, right? The key is we want to be able to know what these tools are, when I would use them, and kind of just an overall overarching like kind of how to like if I wanted to essentially import data, how do I do that, right? If you're able to follow your notes, right, and you're able to understand where that's coming from, then you're good, right? So the first thing that, as I said before, is we're going to be kind of going over how to import our data, right? Let's say we're taking data from outside sources and we want to be able to import it. Now, we can just copy and paste things, sure, but that's not going to be terribly useful when it comes down to data that's formatted really weird. I actually have a great example about this because I had to do this really extremely annoying assignment for one of my classes that had me literally creating keywords and definitions and multiple choice questions for every single lesson, right? And I realized that I did that on like a Google Doc instead of formatting it onto a spreadsheet. So imagine I had all this data, right? And it's just formatted based on just a normal doc, and I need to get this into a spreadsheet format. I can't copy and paste. That's no good. The good part is when I import data, I can do it in a couple of different ways. I can use it using different separators. So you might have heard before about a comma separated value or a tab separated value. I guess it's not there. Whatever. If you've heard of a comma separated value, CSV, or a tab separated value, TSV, these are different ways of creating what's called a delimiter between data. So one that I had created earlier today, right? This is what the comma separated value is going to kind of look like. And of course, it doesn't want to load. Amazing. All right. Well, it doesn't want to load today, apparently, but essentially, it's literally what you would think it would be. Quite literally, a bunch of values that have separators based on commas. So if I have the following data, right? This is what the data was, but because it opened in Excel, Excel is able to determine exactly what is going on with these comma separated values and translate it into a sheet. So my original data was each of these cells separated by a comma. So transaction ID, comma, date, comma, product code, comma, quantity, right? And it goes on and on and on. Immediately, just by uploading this to Excel, right, it converts it like that into a nice, easy comma separated value for me. An easier way of seeing this is if I actually go onto Sheets, right? It's a little easier to see on that. Just go there. Right? Let's say I take a bunch of these values over here, right? And I'm going to just honestly copy and paste a comma separated value sheet onto there. And that way we can kind of see specifically where I would need to, like how exactly it can format. So I know I'm kind of on Google Sheets, not necessarily Excel, but it kind of makes it a little bit easier to see with that. So let me just take a look and get that going. All right, so if I copy and paste this, right, I have this little tab down here. Now, sometimes these comma separated values are going to appear as a table, but sometimes they might not, right? If I paste values only or paste format, okay. Well, occasionally it would actually just pop up as everything smushed within a single cell, right? Now I can change the way that these go. Google Sheets and Excel and other spreadsheet programs are very, very smart with this, right? That's why I literally cannot get this back into the way it was with a comma separated value, right? I could download this, right? I could go to download and do it as a comma separated or tab separated value, right? And we'll get to uploading it and going through it that way, of course. But the key is if I take my data, right? I could put it through a tool like Gemini or ChatGPT, have it translate my written data into a comma separated value, and paste it in as if it was nothing. It works with Google Sheets, Excel, etc. Comma separated values will be your best friend. Quite literally, I'm going to show you the assignment that I had to do that was honestly such a pain to deal with. And you're going to see exactly why that this was extremely helpful, right? I had to create all of these multiple choice questions. Yeah. It was a lot. And it keeps going and it keeps going. There is so much to format here, right? If I have just the questions that are like just default written out, right? I don't want to have to copy the question, paste it to D2, copy the answer, paste it to E2, etc., right? Put it into a CSV value. I gave Gemini my base data, right, which is just in a Google Doc. Put it into Gemini, asked for comma separated values, and immediately paste it in. The format is perfect. So huge, huge bonus with that. Now, that's just literally the basic power of using CSVs and TSVs. Now we're going to actually go into what Excel is able to do, because it can do even more than that. We're going to be able to go over what's called a power query, and it is truly powerful. It's going to allow us to actually import a variety of our data from all different sources. And from that, we're going to be able to clean our data, meaning change it up, make sure it's in the correct format. We're going to be able to merge our data and do a lot of other cool things with it. So if we want to get this part that says get power, if we want to use a power query, we have to go to our data tab and go to the get data tab. Okay, you have to go to the data tab and go to the get data subtab here. And it's going to literally do what it says. It's going to quite literally get your data. So I'm going to walk through an example of this, if I could find it, because of course everything is a mess on my computer. Okay, wonderful. All right. So what I'm going to essentially do is I'm going to take data from two sources and combine it and be able to analyze it from there, right? We're going to get something like this, right? And this is going to be the combination of two different spreadsheets, this part and this part. Okay, let's start from the beginning. I'm going to go to data. I'm going to go to get data from my Power Query. This is going to pop up this here. I can choose to get my data from a variety of sources. Maybe it's from an already existing Excel workbook. Maybe it's from a text or comma separated value file. Maybe it's from another type of source, right? We're going to be focusing more with getting it right from our text or CSV. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to browse my files, right? And I am going to just import these two. This one and this one are going to be my two main data sources. So I'm going to upload both of these guys, right? Oh, let me just do one at a time then, if that's the case. Upload that. Next. It's going to connect to the data source, right? It has to find it on my computer. This is what the raw data looks like. Excel is very smart and can auto-detect what types of data that I got going on. It can see this is a number, right? This is a date. This is a another series of letters, right? ABC. This is another number, right? Maybe I need to change things up. We can definitely do that later on. But this is based on what it perceives, based on the information I was given. I can change file origin. This is just the type of characters that I'm using. Unicode or UTF-8 is the standard, right? Most of your, at least for an English keyboard, will be coming from Unicode characters. But maybe you have something from another language. There's a lot of different ways that it can pick up on that data. I can choose what type of delimiter or separator that I want to use. Commas and tabs are usually most common. Keep in mind that you don't want to accidentally mix up a piece of data that is within your data itself. All of this, none of these have actual commas built into it. If I had a space, let's say, as my delimiter, and something here had a space within it, it would incorrectly pick up that there was actually a change and there was supposed to be a split when there really was not. It was just a space within the data. So we have to be very careful with that. I could choose how many rows that I want. Maybe I only want a little bit of the entire table. Maybe I want to use the entire data set. This is fine to start off with. You do not want to click load until you transform your data. This is going to open up our Power Query editor. This is literally where the magic is going to happen. It's going to allow me to do what's called cleaning my data. Maybe I have two different spreadsheets here, right? This is the other one that I wanted to upload, and this is the original one. Both of these have the same transaction ID. Going back to when we were talking about different keys, data keys, this is our primary key and what's going to be our foreign key. Primary key because every transaction ID is unique. Think of it as like a student ID. My student ID can never overlap someone else's. It's also going to be our foreign ID when we end up merging these. So I'm going to be able to put these ratings corresponding to the correct transaction IDs. So let's first start by merging them, right? There's a lot of things going on here. First, I want to get the merging part done. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to this combine part here. There's two things I can do. I can merge my queries or append my queries. Append is literally just going to add my second sheet to my first, and that's it. But I don't want to just do that because then I'm going to have two duplicates of this transaction ID. I quite literally want to make sure that this 543 is going to snap right into this part here. Now, I could rewrite this. I don't have a lot of data, but when you're dealing with a lot of data, you want to be able to merge things in under a minute. And that's what you're going to be able to do with this. So let's combine. We're going to merge queries. So this is going to be our left table. You're going to have a left and a right. Left is the original. Left is what you are leaving alone. Your right table is going to be what you're smushing in there. So I'm going to select, okay, we're on this. Sheet 2 is what I want to merge, right? I want to merge this onto that. Now, there's a lot of different ways that we can do this. We can do this via what's called a join. Now, a join is going to take the data from one set and another set, right? And it's going to filter out depending on what we choose here. You can visualize this via Venn diagrams, right? This is going to say, if I have duplicates, how am I going to handle this? Left is going to keep everything from the left, and it's going to keep anything that matches from the right. We can see from the set, if let's say maybe this data and this data had just the same values, maybe it was a list of employees who completed a certain training, right? I don't want to necessarily have duplicates perhaps, right? I want to essentially only count duplicates once. This is going to preserve everything from the left and any duplicates that I might have. This is usually going to be your default option. But maybe I want to reverse it. Maybe this right table is going to be my master sheet, and I want to make sure everything from that table gets merged in along with any matchings only once. Maybe I want to make sure I do have matchings. If, let's say, two transaction IDs were identical, I could use full outer, and this ensures that any duplicates here and here stay the same. Maybe I want to check to make sure if each of these transactions were not necessarily based on ID, but maybe a product code. Maybe I want to check how many product ones were sold, right? And I want to actually count those duplicates. I don't want to just get rid of them. Inner is only the matching. Only what is in table 1 and table 2 will get saved. Anti is going to be the opposite. It's only going to be what's in the left. Right anti is only going to be what's in the right. So these joins are only really going to be useful when it comes down to duplicate values. This does not have really duplicates, but it does have the corresponding transaction IDs. So therefore, I want to make sure that all of these transaction IDs get merged successfully with the top ones. In order to make sure that it's the transaction ID that I'm using as a matching key, I have to make sure I select these. And from here, it says the selection match is 3 of 3 rows from the first table, meaning that I have 101, 102, 103. Well, clearly we can see that. But it would have been different if, let's say, I had 101, 102, 103 here, and I had 104, 105, 106 there. Then our joins would work a little bit differently. So it's important to really be able to know what specifically is merging into what. I want to merge this right value into my left value. If there's duplicates, where do I want things to be saving? Do I want them to keep my duplicates, or do I want to only save them from my left or from my right? Maybe I want to only use the ones that have both in our top and our bottom. Maybe I want to get rid of one set entirely. All of these are going to be useful in those specific cases. So for the time being, let's merge our right with our left and let's see what happens. And just like that, we have a table here. This is kind of smushing all of that data into this hyperlink here. I'm going to use this little key here that has the 2 arrows to separate them essentially. What do I want to display? Well, I don't want to display transaction ID again, right? That's going to have transaction ID in this column and in this column. All I want is just to display the rating. I know they're in the right position, right? They're all in the right position, but all my data is just smushed together. If I had like 5 different things that were here, right? Then I could choose specifically what I want to display. So if I do this, right, I see here my ratings have been successfully merged without having a duplicate transaction ID. If I just used the append queries, I would have had a repeat of transaction ID and then rating. That wouldn't have been very helpful for this. Now, what if I accidentally made a mistake? I can revert any of these queries, right? Queries just meaning changes to my data, the way my data is being viewed from over here. Applied steps is going to allow me to backtrack on any of these past changes that I've done. So this is the source, this is the original, and every change that I make has gotten saved. If I make a mistake, right, I could just click this X and it will delete the last change that I've made here. So if I want to make sure that, I did the right thing, I can just X out and it'll revert back to the way it was. Aside from doing merging and things like that, this is a nice table, right? This is quite literally a table, as we can see, table.expand table. This is the function that it's doing on this. I can do anything that I would on a normal table. I could filter, sort, ascending versus descending. I could do all kinds of filters like equals, does not equal, all the same stuff that I was able to do on a normal table, right? This is how I can make sure that things are filtered in the right order. Now that I've merged everything, maybe I want to filter alphabetically if I have just a random list of students. Maybe I want to add a certain column, right? I can now create a custom column if I want to. Let's say I had a price here, right? If I had a price column instead of a rating, I could create a custom column and create a formula for that specific price. I could find the total price by multiplying the quantity by the price. Now notice I put them into these brackets here because I want to make sure I'm referring to this entire column here from this query table, right? Not from the original data, but from the query table. Now this is not going to work correctly because there is no price here right now, right? For the time being, just to make sure that it will output something, I'm going to just put the rating column here. So it will give us some sort of numerical value. I'm going to make sure that the data type is a decimal number, but I can change to make sure that it is whatever it needs to be. Maybe I'm subtracting dates to find the difference between the different days that were elapsed. Maybe I'm doing the same with time, finding a percentage, etc. Whatever it is, I can change the data type to make sure that it works for that specific case. Right? So it would have been a little bit more useful data if this was price rather than a rating. But we can see that this column that I just created that's labeled custom is going to do exactly what I told it to do, multiply quantity by rating, right? And it's going to give me that value. So I can now create a function that works for the entire column without dragging and dropping. But the key here is any changes I make will automatically get changed here too. Maybe I end up switching the order of the columns. Well, guess what? I didn't use just relative references like A1, B1, etc. I actually used the name of the column, quantity in brackets. So because of that, it will adapt to any changes that are made. Okay. Those are the main things that are particularly helpful with queries that allow it to be so powerful. There is way more stuff that you can honestly spend days just on Power Queries. But just for the sake of time, right? We have different ways I can reduce rows, reduce columns. I can clear columns if I want, right? If I don't want to display something, maybe I don't want to display the product code or the date, I could just choose specific columns to display, right? If I take something off, let's say the date, right? Choose columns, it's gone, but I can easily revert that by Xing that out and it comes back. Could do the same with rows. I could filter rows. I could sort. I could split columns. Maybe this date I want to split into days, months, years, right? I want to split by a delimiter. Let me do, instead of a comma, a slash. This is going to separate 6, 1, and 26. And just like that, look at that. It split 6, 1, 20, 26. So even if I had, let's say someone didn't listen to your instructions and put their full name and you want things first name, last name, use a space as a delimiter and split between that, right? Power Query allows you to clean your data and make it in the format you want so that it's not just data. Now there's actual meaning behind it, right? I could change the name of this. I could make this month. I could make this day. I could make this year, right? Just double click it. I could just change it, whatever I need. I'll just leave it just the way it is for the time being. But this is extremely powerful. So at this point, right, I've got my data the way I want it. I'm going to click close and load. This is going to load out this as a table, but it's going to only use the most recent change. So I want to make sure that this change is the one I want. So if I didn't want that, right, I could exit out and go back to the previous change or go to a different one. I'm going to close and load that out. And now we have a beautiful table. This is going to work the same way as normal tables do. I can filter with these little tabs. I could change the styles. I could do slicers. Remember that? Remove duplicates. I could give the table a different name. I can make banded columns. Well, it already is kind of banded with different colors. Anything that you would for a normal table. But this table is way nicer than if I just copied and pasted raw data in, right? You got to make sure to clean your data and make sure that it's in the format that you want. Okay, so that was just kind of a little tutorial on using Power Query. We're just going to go through a couple of other features with the slides, but the key is if you're able to create a Power Query and import your data, right? The opportunities are limitless. I can do anything I want with that, right? So again, this is an example of a comma separated value. Okay, I could have just used this in the very beginning. I didn't have to fight with Excel on that. But as you can tell, right, the comma acts as a delimiter. It separates that so that I can clearly see that this number goes in the first cell, this name goes in the next, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Then when I indent to the next line, that goes to the next row. So this having a comma separated or a tab separator is going to be an extreme power move, right? I can have a custom file structure too, right? I don't necessarily have to say it's going to be comma separated, right? We saw that here. I can change it to tab, semicolon, space, or a custom, like how I did with a date. I used a slash. Okay, I can import however I'd like. I can import as many spreadsheets as I want, any comma separated values, whatever I choose to do. And I can essentially merge that data with anything. So if I have literally data for every student and each thing is in its own spreadsheet, I can merge 10 different spreadsheets together. So I'm not limited with just two. I can do as many as I want. And when you have a ton of data like that, it's extremely important. Okay, data selector. All right. So that's pretty much our Power Queries. Let's take a minute and answer the, let's see, are we doing it on the Amplify? Okay, yeah. Let's answer the 3 questions on Power Queries. And now's probably a good time for a short break too. All right, we'll come back at about 12:10. So if you need to get up, get a drink of water, etc., right? Just answer the 3 questions on Power Queries, and then we'll get back in about 5 minutes. If you have any questions, feel free to ask. Alrighty. So let's go through the questions really quick and then we'll resume. All right. What term describes the process of inserting external data that was created or stored in another format into your current Excel application? All right. This is going to be importing. We want to import data from somewhere else. Querying is what we're going to use to kind of shape our data later on. But for the time being, we want to import our data from an external source. Before you actually import your data into your application, you might need to edit that information from the data source to meet your specific parameters. This is the data shaping itself, right? This is saying I'm getting the raw data in and I want to now shape it into however I want. Maybe I want to add that extra column in. I want to merge two pieces of data together, etc. Right? Finally, when merging queries in Power Queries, what type of join merges all rows from both the left and the right tables, displaying any missing data as a null value, right? This one now is going to be a full outer merge. So this is telling me that I want to merge the outer parts, right, of the left and the right tables, right? I'm not going to only do the inner part. This would be only overlapping. Left anti would be everything not on my left, and right outer is only going to be on the outer part, right? Full outer is going to be pretty much everything on my left and on my right. It's that completely filled in Venn diagram. Okay, those are our three questions. Let's get back to it. And then we will be almost finished. I'm going to go through some of the parts a little quicker since it's just more important to kind of get the gist of things since it gets a little bit more in depth at some of these points. So we went over a couple of different other ways of formatting our data, right? The geography method was a really cool way of doing this. For any of you finance, business, accounting, people that are studying those kind of topics, chances are this stocks data type is going to be particularly useful. This is going to allow you to enter the stock name, right, of whatever stock you're using, right? And it's going to allow you to gain access for that specific stock. I had one earlier. I guess it disappeared. That's fine, right? So let's say if I had, I think like Apple is like one of them, APL, I believe, right? I can go to my data, convert that to a stocks, and no, I did not get the right one. And because, oh, no, it did. Okay, good. See, I can do finance, even as a CS person. So this pops up as a couple of different stock options, right? I'm just going to say Apple, right? This is what I'm referring to. And this is going to have all of this real-time data, right? All of this is at your fingertips and it's constantly being up to date. I'm going to select this, right? And now I see is this little bank icon next to it telling me that it is indeed a stock type. I can click on it and I can access all this kind of stuff. I see the last time that this was updated, the last sale, that was 16 o'clock. That's about 4:13. All right. I could choose to import any of this stuff, right? Let's just say I'm going to do the price. I could click that and boom. Just like how I do for a geography data type, right? It's going to take this and it's going to do A1.price or A1.change or A1.acronym, A1.full name, whatever it is, right? Because it formats it just like how a geography would, right? But this is just a different type of data. We got stocks, geography, there's even currencies here. So if I had a currency value, right? Okay, well, this is already converted, right? This is essentially a formula, so it's not going to work for a currency. But let's just say I had $100.50, right? I go to currencies And oh, I think there was a space at the end or okay. So pretty much I can pretty much convert between currencies, geography, stocks, etc. Let's not deal too much with it. But just like how with geography and stocks, it has this little icon here that allows me to gain access. Currencies should allow me to do the same with that. Um, I don't know. Maybe it's just the, all right. Yeah, I think it might just be the way that I'm writing it out, unless I have to write it out as like dollars or something. Ah, okay. So I have to have it formatted as the word itself, and then I can just say the dollar, right? And I can just have pretty much all that information. All right. For regular money terms, you're better off just using your currency format in home. But let's just continue on with that. Key here, you got stocks, you got geography, you got currencies, all different ways to format our data. Okay. So we went over our power queries at this point, right? These are all the different things that we can do with it. I went over the custom column calculation, right? This is allowing me to create a new column based on my existing data. I'm calculating some sort of formula with this. Maybe I'm taking my selling price and subtracting my purchase price divided by my purchase price. Whatever it is, I could create. I just had a simple one where I just multiply the rating by the quantity. Again, you can do this for anything you'd like. And it's great because it's using these bracket notation. So I don't have to worry about issues if my relative references change, right? These are referring to the column itself. It's not going to change even if I shift it over to a different place. Okay, if I wanted to get rid of rows, it's easy to do. I can do the same with our columns. We know about our data types. These are pretty straightforward, pretty much the same as just normal cell data as well. Right. Common field is another way of saying my foreign key, right? These are the ones that allow me to relate data from one table to another. And that's what we went over with our join, right? This is the full information about the joins, right? We kind of went over that a little bit. I say just kind of think of it as like the little Venn diagrams. The Venn diagrams are telling you exactly what data you're getting it from. Remember that your left is your first, your right is your second. Okay. This is a slightly, I think, older version of Excel. So depending on which one you use, it might be a little different. So if it looks different, don't worry about it. Just understand that no matter which one you're on, it should have this join kind information. All right. Append query we went over, rather than merging the specific data, it's going to just add it to the very end. Now, let's say I'm at my table and I want to view all of the current queries. I can just go to my data tab and I can access the queries right over here, queries and connections. And it allows me to see everything. I can gain properties from it. I could refresh it if it's not up to date. Maybe someone changed it. And I could also change them as well, right? I could go to my data source settings up here and I can essentially change the file itself, right? This is the pop-up. These are all the source references I have. Maybe I need to change something. I could easily change them up. If a file name changed for whatever reason, I could refresh them, etc. All of that is within this here. I don't have to just get data. I can launch my Power Query editor to change up queries. I could change my sources, etc. Okay. And yeah. So finally, there's just two other things I wanted to go over really quickly. We're not going to spend too much time on Power Pivot because frankly, you kind of know enough with regular pivot tables. Power Pivot is an add-in that you're able to pretty much just add onto your existing Excel, very similar to quick analysis and other stuff. But basically, you're just able to superpower your pivot tables, right? If you want to add this onto Excel, since it's not built in, go to your add-ins and check that off. It'll be with all of the other add-ins that you'd have as well, right? But again, regular pivot tables should honestly be enough for pretty much most of what you are doing. You can add specific data to a data model. It could be an existing pivot table, or it could just be a normal table, etc. But it's going to allow you to analyze whatever data it is more so than just the normal pivot tables, right? Just like with a regular Power Query, I have to add the data itself, right? Once I add the data to our data model, just like how I would add data to a Power Query, I can, just like with Power Query, create relationships between the data itself. Looks familiar, right? I click on my foreign key, right? Foreign, it's found on this table and this table. It links them. This is telling me associate everything here with, hi, 1 second. All good. Love to share it. Okay, sorry about that. Just like before, we have our relationships, right? We can link together. So everything on account here, everything in this row is going to link with everything on this corresponding row. It's just kind of continuing that along. Finally, there's also what's called a DAX, data analysis expressions. We will not be going over this very much, but keep in mind that this is a way of taking your data and analyzing the changes that are going along with it. For instance, if I select profit loss and I pass in my selling price, purchase price, right? I can essentially say what that result tells me about my data using what's called an explicit or implicit measure. Explicit, think it's explicitly created by you, right? You are explicitly telling Excel, this is what I want. You're manually creating it. Implicit is going to be assumed by Excel. Just like how Excel assumes what type of data you're using, etc. Implicit is going to make an assumption based on your data. So if you have profit loss, you could say explicitly, okay, profit is positive, loss is negative, right? That's pretty straightforward. And honestly, if it was implicit, I bet that Excel could also assume that. But maybe it's something a little bit more confusing or a little bit more niche. Maybe you're trying to find something in particular that is specific to your job. Maybe you're trying to find a specific employee, or you're finding some string that's not necessarily straightforward. You can explicitly measure that and create an analysis expression to say, if the name, let's say, starts with A, then that means they are in a specific group, let's say, right? Obviously, Excel's not going to know that everyone with an A name is going in a specific group, so you'd have to explicitly tell them that. Okay, you can do this little drop down to have what you want to specifically analyze. We're dealing with money here, right? Commodity is a type of thing that we're trading here, right? Money. The previous one was profit loss. That's another thing that you can easily do, right? But essentially, when I explicitly say what's going on, right, I'm saying, hey, whatever this is, right, this is what I want to analyze specifically. So you do have a little bit control with implicit measures. You can kind of specify a little bit of what it is. Like, okay, you can want to say, maybe summarize it as a sum, a count, an average, etc. But if it's something that is more niche, you want to define it up here rather than having Excel do the work and just giving it a small hint. And finally, these guys can be used. Power pivots can be made into regular pivot tables. If you want to display it, make it easy for people to access, right? Power pivot has a lot of features that maybe you don't want people touching. So if you want to make it into a pivot table, reminder, why we use pivot tables? It's great for displaying things. I could filter things. I could turn specific tabs on and off without changing the original data, right? This is just a view for it. Power Pivot just takes it one step further and allows me to use those DAXs to analyze my data further. And the final thing is we're going to go over briefly this really cool feature, making 3D maps. This is honestly something that is pretty new on some of the newer versions of Excel. So if you're on an older version, you might not really have this. But essentially, it is possible to take geographic data, right? Where do we get geographic data from? From the geography data type. So if I went back to my previous one and marked off specific states, let's say, right? I know I can create shaded diagrams like how we did the other day, but I can also use this as a 3D map and be able to zoom in to specific places, right? This tells me a little bit more about what's kind of going on here. There's a lot of different things here. I can make specific scenes. Maybe I want to zoom in on New York and specify a specific state. Maybe I want to zoom out. I can make those separate scenes. Similar to a slideshow, you're actually able to zoom in and zoom out and create what's called a tour. You might not really be using this for the average day of Excel, but it would be really cool if, let's say, you're doing something for your company and maybe you want to show all the places that people have bought and sold stocks from, right? You can mark off all these locations, right, by latitude and longitude or by state or however you'd like, and you can choose to have a tour going through all of them and the data of each, right? I could format my locations in all different ways like this. All of this could work from simple coordinates to just country regions, addresses. You could be as vague or specific as you want. Again, maybe you want just little dot pinpricks. Maybe you want the entire state highlighted. All kinds of things like that. Okay, and essentially you can choose which way you want it to be displayed. Maybe you want it to have more of like a color. You want to have like these poles kind of coming out of these specific places, like putting a pin on a map. Maybe you want it to be dots like the previous example. It's a lot of really cool things here. And what's really cool is this is just in Excel, right? You can literally just do this from a software that you didn't even know that it exists from. It does come from Bing, so it is consistently updated. It's pretty powerful for something that's built into a spreadsheet software that would usually not kind of do this specific thing. But again, pretty cool thing. Maybe you have to make a video that goes around specific places of the world. Great way of doing that. And you can even capture the screen, create a video right from this without needing any expensive software. Because again, you have Excel till you graduate basically for free. Just sign in with your login account. All right, and that is all for that. I know we kind of went through the later part of it a little bit quicker just because this stuff is a little bit more niche, right? Power queries are things that you would be using much more often because chances are you're going to have to be able to import data, number one, and you want to be able to clean your data so that it can work for your specific case, right? If I have this CSV over here, right? Maybe I need to switch it around so that it's not first name dot last name. I want to make it last name, then first name, right? Maybe I need to take their earnings and sum it up. I can add formulas like that. I could do so much and make that CSV exactly the way that I want it. And of course, anything that we did not spend a lot of time on, like Power Pivot, 3D maps, that kind of stuff, won't be tested. Don't worry about it. It may be a little bit on the labs, but it'll walk you through it, so it won't be too bad or anything. From this, main thing to take out of it is importing your data and shaping your data with Power Queries. All right, with that being said, let's do the last couple of questions, and then we will head out for the day. While we take a minute, if anyone has any questions, just let me know. All right, let's go over the questions. All right. So according to the data types available in the Power Query editor, which data type should be used specifically for data that's formatted as a 1 or 0? So I see that it was a little split on my end for true, false, and binary. So the answer is actually going to be binary for this. And the reason is because binary itself is going to be zeros and ones, right? Technically, especially if you're in computer science at all, true and false also can take on binary forms, right? Usually true is 1, false is 0, right? But by default, if we're just dealing with ones and zeros, that default would indeed be binary, right? So think binary by 2, it's 1 and 0. So that is a bit of a trick question. You're not going to get something crazy like something that could be, you know, thought of as both ways on the exam. But just keep in mind, technically you can represent true and false as zeros and ones, but if we have the data that's just ones and zeros, that's going to be our binary. And again, if you're not, I just want to make it clear in case it wasn't clear earlier, you aren't graded based on whether you get these questions correct or not. It's just based on participation, right? I'm not going to grade you on a pop quiz on something that you learned like 5 minutes ago. That would be crazy. So as long as you answer the questions consistently, you're going to be totally fine and you're going to get those easy 5 points. So don't worry about being correct. Just, take something out of it. So, all right. In Power Pivot, you can create measures using data analysis expressions. What type of measure is created automatically when a field is passed in the value area of a pivot table? So I know we kind of went through this a little bit quicker, but we did go over implicit and explicit measures. By default, Excel's always going to want to try to assume what you're referring to, right? By default, it's going to use implicit, right? It's going to assume that you want Excel to automatically detect what you're dealing with. If it gets it wrong implicitly, then you can switch to an explicit matter. Again, Power Pivot, we didn't spend very long on that. Don't expect on the exam, but just want to make sure you do take something out of it in case, let's say you're in a business situation and they use a Power Pivot table, right? You want to have enough of a background that you can take initiative and learn it on your own later on, right? We went over a lot in this class. It's not about memorizing everything. You want to just be able to understand the gist of what's going on. Know that, hey, I know that's an Excel feature, and I can look into it and understand it if I put the effort in because of my current Excel knowledge. Okay, and and that was the end. Okay. I don't know why I thought there was another question. All right. So with that being said, we are done for today. And with that, we have another week completely down. We got 2 more days to go of content, and then the final exam, which is kind of crazy to think about. Reminder, please ensure this weekend that you do the chapter 8, 9, and 10 work. That's going to be due Monday night. If you have questions, don't hesitate to email us, and you'll also have time on Monday's lab to go over general questions if you'd prefer to just bring them up in person. Grades should be up soon, and otherwise, have a great weekend, and
Sure.
the final exam's coming up. Hi, you have a question?
Yes, chapter 11 and 12 will be available end of this weekend.
I'm going to open them up right now. I'm going to open up 11 and 12. I'm going to put the chapters in here right now. I have them signed for Monday and Tuesday, but you're going to have access right now. And I'm also going to make sure that you have unlimited attempts on chapters 10, 11, and 12 because originally they were not formatted correctly.
Okay, thank
Of course. Yeah. So if your access is going to be ending soon, right, and you want to get that refund, um, I will open these guys up so you can get the work done early. I don't mind at all. Just make sure before you cancel that you get all your work done. You cannot get access again when you finish. Um, so download any notes, part of the textbooks, anything that you need, right? That's on Pearson before you end your access. And reminder, you should probably start kind of prepping your notes. Make sure in person, on paper, it's going to be during the lecture. The lab, you'll have a review so you can go over any last minute questions that you might have. I'll stay on for a few minutes, but otherwise, I hope you guys have a great weekend.